Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. The presidential election here in France is exactly 1 year away. The sitting president, François Hollande, will not announce whether he intends to run for re-election until the end of this year. But if he does, he will be nothing short of a miracle to remain in the Elysée Palace. According to the latest polls, he stands no chance whatsoever, not only of winning, but even of making it to the second round of the election. Which begs the question, is he already doomed? With me to discuss the prospects of François Hollande for next year's presidential election, Philippe Terrell from Radio France Internationale, and Stefan de Vries, who is the correspondent for the Dutch TV station RTL4 here in Paris. A lame duck, President Hollande told journalists who were traveling with him in the Middle East this week to pray for him, as a joke, but that's when he was asked about the dreadful poll results. Here they are. A poll taken by TNS Sofres, 1 point, pits the president against 4 different conservative candidates, as well as candidates for the far right and the far left. And he would not qualify for the second round against any of them. For instance, against his predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy, he would garner only 16% of the votes in the round 1 versus 24% for Nicolas Sarkozy, 29% for the far right leader, Marine Le Pen. Alain Juppé, a former conservative prime minister, François Hollande would get only 13% of the votes, 35% for Juppé. 35% for Juppé, 26% for Marine Le Pen. And even against candidates on the conservative side that are clearly not favorites to become the presidential candidate, he would lose. You should be depressed if you're François Hollande today.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, these are very worrying numbers for him. And it's not even sure whether he will make it at all at the election, because there will be probably a primary at the Socialist Party.
That's not a given.
That's not a given, no. But it's very likely, since many people would like to see a primary, or even a primary for the complete left side of the French politics. It's not very sure whether he will win this primary. So there is even a chance that he will be, maybe a lame duck after the socialist primaries at the end of this year, which will create an unprecedented situation. That a sitting president will not be a candidate even 6 months before the election. So he's really, really in trouble.
Those figures are historically low figures. I mean, for a sitting president, we've had presidents who were unpopular at the end of their mandate, but they were clearly in a position to run and to compete. Nicolas Sarkozy lost in the second round against François Hollande, but it was a honorable defeat. If the election was tomorrow, François Hollande would be eliminated.
Well, if you look back at how presidents have fared over the last 30 years in France, François Mitterrand won a decisive second victory in 1988 after having been elected in 1981 and having gone through a very bad period of unpopularity in the mid-1980s, managed to pull off a second victory. Jacques Chirac, who was elected in 1995, he also won a second round in 1995.
2002, right?
2002, even though he faced off against Marine Le Pen of the far-right National Front, or Jean-Marie Le Pen, should I say, her father. So he managed also to be re-elected. Nicolas Sarkozy didn't, but as you said, it was an honourable defeat. It was only a very, very limited amount of difference between him and François Hollande. This time around, it's completely different. François Hollande is vastly unpopular, and as these opinion polls show, a year ahead of the presidential election, there is absolutely no way that he would even obtain an honourable result if he were to run for a second mandate, which is something that has virtually never been seen since the start of the Fifth Republic of France in 1958. So we're in this situation now where normally the outgoing presidential candidate will be the natural candidate for his own succession. This time round, it just doesn't look possible for the Socialist Party, and the Socialist Party is in an enormous situation of disarray, and it's even fueling more support for the far left of the French political spectrum from disillusioned voters who would have voted for François Hollande last time round but don't want to do it this time round, and others are moving towards the far right of Marine Le Pen, and the Socialist Party really doesn't know what to do to pull them back.
Let's take a listen to the head of the Socialist Party, Jean-Christophe Cambadélis, who still believes Hollande can pull it off. Let's take a listen.
The only one who can unify the left is François Hollande. If the left's divided, it's useless. We shouldn't even compete. I'm sure François Hollande would win if we held a primary on the left. I'm ready to take the risk. Let's do this. We'll see what the people on the left think of what Hollande's done so far.
When you look at France, only François Hollande could say things are improving. When you travel a lot around the country, you see it's tough. People are struggling. I think the results of both elections, the Conservatives' primary and the presidential elections, are going to be surprising. The French don't want to see the same old, same old. They don't want to see in 2017 a remake of the 2012 election.
So you had both Jean-Christophe Cambadélis, the head of the Socialist Party, and one of the Conservative candidates, Bruno Le Maire. The Socialists really believe that François Hollande will be their candidate, and they're probably trying to avert a primary, which could be devastating for the president. Because imagine a sitting president already running for a primary, which is a kind of humiliation, but then losing.
Yeah, exactly, and that shows that the Socialist Party doesn't really believe that he will stand a chance. And because if they organize the election, then if he loses, that will be really real embarrassment for the president, because that would means that in December he will already be done basically, and he still has 6 months to govern then after that. So it's a very complicated situation also for the candidates on the left, because on the more left of the Socialist Party, because if they participate in the primaries, they have to support François Hollande when he wins the primaries, and that's something that's, well, the Green Party doesn't want to do. The Front de Gauche, which is the extreme left, doesn't want to do either. So it's a very complicated situation, and everybody loses basically, whatever the results will be.
So you might see the whole left wing annihilated as a result of this presidential election, because there's no agreement between the far left and the socialists, between the far left parties themselves and the socialists. We have a situation where, case scenario number one, François Hollande runs for president. He loses because the opinion polls are bad.
He doesn't make it to the second round.
He doesn't make it to the second round, so he's eliminated. It's a humiliation for him. Second hypothesis, François Hollande runs in the primaries to become a candidate for the presidential election. He is eliminated from the primaries. It's another humiliation for him. But if he wins that primary election and runs for president, he's going to be eliminated anyway. So it's a humiliation whichever way the Socialist Party turns to try to win back some kind of credit if François Hollande is their candidate. And if he decides not to run, that's another humiliation for François Hollande, because it means basically, well, I'm not even going to try to run because there's no chance of me winning at all.
But he still believes he can turn things around. Let's put things in perspective. According to the poll, Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader, will make it to the second round. And the candidate she will run against normally wins, because the far-right might be on the rise, but still doesn't have a majority in France. So if François Hollande manages to go to the second round, he has a very, very narrow path to re-election. But do you think that even this strategy, which is a kind of minimal strategy, is dead today?
Well, I think that's he really believes in that strategy, that his aim is he will make it to the second round, and then basically he won the elections. But you've seen that with the reactions to the terrorist attacks, very basically right-wing reactions, the state of emergency, his propositions to change the constitution. All this was to basically lure the right-wing electorate, the moderate right-wing electorate.
That's not working.
That's not working at all, because the alternative is Alain Juppé, who is the former right-wing Prime Minister, who becomes also an alternative for moderate left-wing voters. So this is the real danger, Alain Juppé, and it's not sure whether he will be a candidate, because he has to win the primaries on the right as well.
But he's the favorite.
He's the favorite, and even people who voted for François Hollande because they thought, well, François Hollande is a social democrat, are now more likely to vote Alain Juppé than François Hollande. So it's really, really difficult.
Right, but he always says that he wants to be a kind of balance, but it seems he's not won the right and he's lost his left.
Well, politics is a very uncertain game, and a year is a long time in politics, and a lot can change in a year. And we've had situations in the past where candidates were given no chance of winning and they pulled off a victory a year later. So let's not wipe François Hollande out of the picture just yet. There is a little window of hope for François Hollande. They're calling it a mouse hole that he's hoping to climb through to win a victory next year. And that is that what he's hoping will be that there are so many candidates on the right, including the former President Nicolas Sarkozy and lots of members of his party, that once they've all been declared, once all the campaigning starts, they're all going to tear each other apart, and the potential voters for those candidates will become extremely disillusioned, and they'll say, well, maybe François Hollande's not so bad after all, he's done quite a lot. And second thing is, if by some miraculous chance between now and the beginning of next year, the unemployment rate would actually begin to fall in France and economic growth will come back.
That could happen.
That could happen, and that might also help François Hollande win a second victory. So, situation is, it's highly improbable that François Hollande will be elected again next year, but it's not impossible that François Hollande is re-elected next year.
Do you share that assessment?
I totally agree.
So you still believe there is a slight chance?
Yeah, a very slight chance. But
the economy needs to turn around. He says it's happening. We don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't realize it, but it's happening.
Well, in February, France was one of the few European countries where unemployment actually was still on the rise. 2 or 3 countries with Italy and another country. So everywhere in Europe, unemployment is going down already for months and for months. Not in France. So something is going really, really bad in France, and I'm not very sure that François Hollande will turn around the economy this year. And if he succeeds, well, then he's got only 5 or 6 months left to make a campaign on this. But it's not enough. And I mean, he wants to lower the unemployment, but compared to what moment in time, compared to when he became president, which is impossible because now France is 1 million more unemployed people than when he became a president, compared to maybe last week. Well, then he may have a chance, but
too little, too late.
Too little, too late. Yeah.
Okay, we'll obviously be following that presidential race.